Emma Rodriguez clutched her worn leather portfolio against her chest as she stood before the towering glass doors of the cross-tower penthouse. The October wind whipped through her dark curls, and she pulled her modest cardigan tighter around her shoulders. 23 years old and barely making ends meet as an art student, she had never imagined stepping foot in such luxury. The nanny position advertisement had seemed too good to be true. But with her mother's medical bills piling up, she couldn't afford to be picky. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Emma checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothing down her simple black dress and adjusting the pearl earrings her grandmother had given her. She had chosen her most professional outfit, though compared to the elegant women she had seen in the lobby, she felt like a sparrow among peacocks. When the elevator doors opened, Emma stepped into a world that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city below, while modern art pieces adorned the walls. The apartment was a masterpiece of contemporary design, all clean lines and sophisticated neutrals. She had studied spaces like this in her architecture classes, but never dreamed of actually standing in one. A distinguished man in a perfectly tailored suit approached her. His silver hair was styled impeccably, and his eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone accustomed to power. This had to be Mr. Cross, she thought. Though he looked younger than she had expected for someone with a 10-year-old daughter, Miss Rodriguez. "I presume," he said in a cultured voice that sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. Emma nodded, extending her hand. "Yes, sir. Thank you so much for considering me for the nanny position. I know my resume might seem limited, but I have extensive experience with children through my volunteer work at the community center." Something flickered across his face, an expression she couldn't quite read. His dark eyes, the color of rich coffee, studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. He didn't shake her offered hand, instead gesturing toward the living area. "Please, have a seat. Can I offer you something to drink?" Emma perched on the edge of a cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than her entire semester's tuition. "Water would be wonderful, thank you." Instead of water, he returned with 2 glasses of wine. Emma hesitated, not wanting to seem rude, but alcohol during a job interview felt inappropriate. Still, she accepted the glass with a polite smile. "So," he said, settling into the chair across from her, his presence commanding even in the spacious room. "Tell me what brings you here tonight, Miss Rodriguez?" Emma set down her wine glass and opened her portfolio. "Well, as I mentioned, I saw your advertisement for a nanny. I have my CPR certification, references from the community center where I volunteer, and I'm currently studying child development as part of my psychology minor." She paused, noting his raised eyebrow. "I know I'm young, but I believe that sometimes connects me better with children. They don't see me as another adult telling them what to do." He leaned back, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Interesting approach. And you're comfortable with the arrangements I mentioned in the posting?" Emma frowned slightly, trying to remember the details. The job posting had been brief, mentioning live-in arrangements and discretion required. "Of course. I understand that wealthy families value their privacy. I would never discuss your family's personal matters with anyone." "Privacy," he repeated, his voice carrying an undertone she couldn't identify. "Yes, that's certainly important." Before Emma could respond, the sound of small feet running across hardwood floors filled the air. A little girl with honey blonde hair and pigtails burst into the room, clutching a stuffed elephant. She stopped short when she saw Emma, her large blue eyes wide with curiosity. "Daddy, who's the pretty lady?" Emma's heart melted instantly. The child was beautiful, with her father's intelligent eyes and a smattering of freckles across her nose. She wore purple pajamas decorated with stars and had clearly been getting ready for bed. "Sophie." "This is Miss Emma," he said, his voice noticeably softer when addressing his daughter. "She's here to talk with Daddy about taking care of you." Sophie approached Emma with the bold curiosity only children possessed. "Are you going to be my new nanny?" The last one was mean and smelled like cigarettes. Emma couldn't help but laugh, charmed by the child's honesty. "Well, I don't smoke, and I try very hard not to be mean." "What do you like to do for fun, Sophie?" "I like to paint and read stories about dragons. Daddy reads to me every night before bed, but sometimes he has to work late." Sophie climbed onto the sofa next to Emma, apparently having decided she approved of this new adult. I love to paint too, Emma said, her eyes lighting up. I'm actually an art student. Maybe we could paint together sometime. Sophie clapped her hands excitedly. Really? Could we paint a dragon? Sophie, her father interrupted gently. It's past your bedtime. Say good night, and let Maria help you get ready for bed. An older woman appeared as if summoned, clearly the housekeeper. Sophie hugged Emma impulsively before skipping off with Maria, chattering about painting dragons. When they were alone again, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Emma noticed Damien Cross watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. There was something predatory about his gaze, yet not in a way that frightened her. Instead, it sent warmth coursing through her veins. You're very good with her, he said finally. She's wonderful. You're lucky to have such a bright, sweet daughter. Emma meant every word. In just those few minutes, Sophie had captured her heart completely. Her mother died when she was 3, he said quietly. It's been just Sophie and me since then. Emma's heart clenched with sympathy. I'm so sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you. He nodded, then stood and moved to the window, his silhouette outlined against the glittering city lights. Sophie has trouble bonding with caregivers. Most women who come into our lives are more interested in my wealth than in caring for my daughter. I can understand why you'd be protective, Emma said softly. But I want you to know that I'm here because I genuinely love working with children. The money is important to me, I won't lie about that, but not for the reasons you might think. He turned back to her, curiosity evident in his expression. Oh, Emma hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. My mother has been battling cancer for 2 years. The medical bills are overwhelming, even with insurance. I'm working 3 part-time jobs and going to school, but it's not enough. This position would allow me to help her while doing something I'm passionate about. Something shifted in his expression, softening she hadn't expected. He returned to his seat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. That's very admirable. Emma. Family should always come first. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. There was an intimacy to it that seemed inappropriate for a job interview. Yet she found herself drawn to it rather than offended. Thank you, Mr. Cross. I hope you'll consider me for the position. Damien, he corrected. And yes, I think we should definitely explore this arrangement further. Emma felt a surge of relief and excitement. Really? When would you like me to start? How about a trial period? Stay here tonight, see how Sophie responds to you in the morning. We can discuss the details of your contract over breakfast. Emma blinked in surprise. Tonight? I didn't bring any overnight things. Maria can provide anything you need. I have a guest room prepared. His eyes held hers steadily. Unless you're uncomfortable with that arrangement. Emma considered. It was unusual, certainly, but wealthy people often did things differently. And if it meant securing this job, she couldn't afford to seem inflexible. That would be fine, she said. Thank you for the opportunity. Damien smiled, and Emma felt her pulse quicken. There was something dangerous about that smile, something that made her think of dark chocolate and forbidden desires. She pushed the inappropriate thoughts away, reminding herself this was a professional relationship. Maria will show you to your room, he said, pressing a button on a discreet panel. We typically have breakfast at 8. Sophie likes pancakes on weekends, as Maria appeared to escort Emma to the guest room. Damien stood and moved close enough that she caught his scent. Something expensive and masculine that made her head spin slightly. Sweet dreams, Emma, he murmured, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Emma followed Maria down a hallway lined with original paintings, mind reeling. She had come here seeking employment and found something far more complicated. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment. Decorated in soft blues and silvers, with a king-size bed that looked like a cloud, as she settled into the luxurious space. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into something much bigger than a simple nanny job. The way Damien looked at her, the undercurrents in their conversation, the almost intimate atmosphere despite the professional setting, it all suggested complications. She hadn't anticipated. She thought about Sophie's sweet face and her mother's medical bills, reminding herself why she was here. Whatever games wealthy men played, she needed to stay focused on her goals. But as she drifted off to sleep in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Emma couldn't stop thinking about coffee dark eyes and the way her name sounded. In Damien Cross's voice, tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for the first time in months, Emma allowed herself to feel hopeful about the future. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains and the soft sound of classical music drifting from somewhere in the penthouse. For a moment, she forgot where she was, the luxury of her surroundings feeling like a dream. Then reality rushed back, along with nervous excitement about her first full day as Sophie's potential nanny. After showering, in the marble bathroom that was larger than her bedroom at home, Emma dressed in her second-best outfit, a navy blue blouse and black slacks. Maria had left fresh towels and toiletries, along with a note saying breakfast would be served at 8. Emma found her way to the dining room, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city awakening below. Sophie was already seated at the long mahogany table, swinging her legs and chattering to her father about a dream she'd had about flying elephants. "Emma," Sophie called out when she spotted her, waving enthusiastically. Daddy made pancakes shaped like stars. Damien looked up from his newspaper, and Emma felt that same electric jolt from the night before. He was dressed more casually today, in dark jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. And Emma found this less polished version of him somehow even more attractive. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "I hope you slept well." "Very well, thank you." "This is all so generous." Emma took the seat Maria indicated, across from Sophie and diagonal from Damien. The table could have seated 12, but somehow the three of them created an intimate bubble at one end. "Tell Emma about your dream, Sophie," Damien encouraged, serving Emma a plate of perfectly golden star-shaped pancakes. As Sophie launched into an elaborate tale involving flying elephants and candy clouds, Emma found herself relaxing. This felt natural, comfortable even. Sophie was an engaging child, bright and imaginative, and Damien proved to be a devoted father, listening to every word of his daughter's story with genuine interest. "Emma, do you have any brothers or sisters?" Sophie asked, between bites of pancake. "No, it's just me and my mom," Emma replied. "But I have a cat named Pablo who thinks he's a dog," Sophie giggled. "That's silly. Can I meet Pablo sometime?" Emma glanced at Damien, unsure how to answer. "Well, that would depend on your father and where Pablo is allowed to visit." "We'll see," Damien said diplomatically. "First, let's see how today goes." After breakfast, Emma spent the morning with Sophie while Damien worked in his home office. They painted watercolor dragons, read 3 stories about princesses who saved themselves, and built an elaborate castle out of blocks. Sophie was delightful company, creative and affectionate, though Emma noticed she seemed to test boundaries frequently, as if expecting to be disappointed or abandoned. During Sophie's quiet time, Emma found herself wandering the penthouse. The art collection was stunning, featuring both classic and contemporary pieces. She paused before a Monet water lily painting. Studying the brushwork with professional interest, art, Damien's voice came from behind her. Emma turned, finding him leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He'd changed into a black sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. And Emma had to remind herself to breathe normally. "I'm studying art history along with child development," she said. "This is beautiful. The way he captures light on water is extraordinary." Damien moved to stand beside her. It's close enough that she caught his scent again, that intoxicating blend of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. It was my wife's favorite painting. She had excellent taste. Emma heard the pain beneath his casual tone. "She must have been a remarkable woman to inspire such devotion in you." He turned to study her profile. "What makes you say that?" "The way you still speak of her in present tense. The way Sophie describes feeling safe and loved, even though she lost her mother so young. That doesn't happen unless a man truly loved his wife and continues to honor her." Memory. Something shifted in Damien's expression, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "You're very perceptive, Emma." They stood in comfortable silence, both gazing at the painting. Emma was acutely aware of his presence beside her, the warmth radiating from his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Sophie seems quite taken with you. She's an amazing child. You've done a wonderful job raising her. It hasn't been easy. The women who've come into our lives since Catherine died have mostly been interested in my wealth or status." Sophie learned early to be wary of new people. Emma felt a pang of sympathy for both father and daughter. That must be lonely for both of you. It has been, he admitted, then seemed to catch himself. But Sophie appears to trust you instinctively. That's rare. Their eyes met, and Emma felt something pass between them, an understanding that went beyond words. The moment stretched until Sophie's voice calling for Emma broke the spell. The rest of the day passed in a pleasant blur. Emma helped Sophie with a jigsaw puzzle, taught her a simple watercolor technique, and listened to elaborate stories about Sophie's stuffed animals. When evening came, Emma felt genuinely sad that her trial day was ending. During dinner, Damien was more relaxed than he'd been the night before, asking Emma about her studies and sharing stories about Sophie's early years. Emma found herself laughing at his tales of toddler mischief and feeling increasingly comfortable in their family dynamic. After Sophie's bath, Emma was surprised when Damien asked if she'd like to help with bedtime stories. "Would you read to me, Emma?" Sophie asked, snuggling under her covers with her stuffed elephant. Emma chose a book about a brave little mouse and settled into the reading chair beside Sophie's bed. As she read, she was aware of Damien standing in the doorway watching. His presence was distracting but not unpleasant, and she found herself putting extra expression into the story, wanting to impress him with her reading skills. When Sophie's breathing deepened into sleep, Emma quietly closed the book and tiptoed toward the door. Damien stepped aside to let her pass, his hand briefly touching the small of her back to guide her. The simple touch sent electricity through her entire body. They walked to the living room in comfortable silence. Emma expected him to dismiss her for the evening, but instead, he poured 2 glasses of wine and gestured toward the sofa. "How do you think the day went?" he asked, settling beside her, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Wonderfully. Sophie is incredible, truly. If you decide to hire me, I promise you won't regret it." "I've already decided," he said quietly. "The position is yours if you want it." Emma felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "Really, thank you so much, Damien. You won't regret this decision." "I don't think I will," he said, his gaze intense. "There's something different about you, Emma. Something genuine." The wine and his proximity were making Emma feel bold. "You're different than I expected to." "How so?" "The way you are with Sophie. How devoted you are to her. And you're not arrogant, like I thought a billionaire might be. You're kind, thoughtful." Damien's expression grew serious. "Don't put me on a pedestal, Emma. I'm not as noble as you think." Before Emma could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. His expression darkened as he read it. "I'm sorry, but I need to take care of something. Maria will show you back to your room. We can discuss the details of your employment tomorrow." Emma sensed the shift in his mood and didn't push. "Of course. Thank you again for this opportunity." As she prepared for bed in the luxurious guest room, Emma reflected on the day. Working for Damien Cross would be more challenging than she'd anticipated. Not because of Sophie or the job requirements, but because of her growing attraction to her employer. The way he looked at her, the electricity she felt when he was near. The glimpses of vulnerability beneath his polished exterior. All of it was dangerous territory for someone in her position. But Sophie needed stability. Emma needed the income, and perhaps Damien needed someone who saw past his wealth to the man beneath. As long as she maintained professional boundaries, surely she could handle whatever complications arose. Emma fell asleep thinking about coffee-dark eyes and the way. Hush. Damien's voice softened when he spoke to his daughter. Completely unaware that her new employer was lying awake 3 rooms away, thinking about her genuine smile and wondering how long he could maintain the fiction that had brought her into his life. 3 weeks into her employment, Emma had settled into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. Her days were filled with Sophie's laughter. Art projects scattered across the dining table. Quiet moments when she caught Damien watching her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. The attraction between them had grown stronger, simmering beneath the surface of their professional relationship like a secret neither was willing to acknowledge. Emma had moved into the staff quarters, a comfortable suite that was still more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. Her mother's medical treatments were progressing well, thanks to the excellent insurance Damien provided. And for the first time in years, Emma felt hopeful about the future. On a crisp November evening, Damien surprised her by asking if she'd accompany him and Sophie to a charity gala. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear," Emma protested. though her heart raced at the thought of spending an evening by his side. "That's taken care of," he said. Gesturing to several garment bags, Maria was hanging in Emma's room. "Choose whichever you prefer." Emma stared at the selection of designer gowns, each more beautiful than the last. She chose a deep emerald dress that complemented her dark hair and made her eyes sparkle. When she emerged from her room that evening, both Damien and Sophie were waiting in the living room. "Emma, you look like a princess," Sophie exclaimed, clapping her hands. Emma blushed, but it was Damien's reaction that stole her breath. His eyes darkened as they traveled over her. She saw his hands clench slightly at his sides. "You look stunning," he said quietly, his voice rough around the edges. The gala was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair attended by society's elite. Emma felt out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry, but Damien stayed close, his hand resting lightly on her back as he introduced her to various business associates and philanthropists. "This is Emma Rodriguez." "Sophie's nanny," he would say, but the way he said it, the possessive undertone in his voice, suggested something more than a professional relationship. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself relaxing and even enjoying the sophisticated conversation and elegant atmosphere. When the orchestra began playing for dancing, Damien surprised her by extending his hand. "Dance with me," he said, and it wasn't really a request. Emma hesitated. "I should check on Sophie. Sophie is happily occupied with the dessert buffet and Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter. Dance with me, Emma." She placed her hand in his, and he led her onto the dance floor. The moment his arms encircled her, Emma felt the world fade away. They moved together perfectly, as if they'd been dancing together for years rather than minutes. "You're full of surprises," Damien murmured against her ear, his breath warm against her skin. "What do you mean?" "The way you fit into this world, how naturally elegant you are. You were born for more than you've allowed yourself to dream." Emma pulled back slightly to meet his eyes. "I'm happy with my life, Damien. I don't need luxury to feel fulfilled." "What do you need?" he asked, his gaze intense, before Emma could answer. They were interrupted by a woman in a silver gown, her smile sharp and calculating. "Damien, darling, aren't you going to introduce me to your companion?" Damien's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Victoria, this is Emma Rodriguez." "Emma, Victoria Hamilton." Victoria's eyes assessed Emma with the cold precision of a predator evaluating prey. "How lovely. And what do you do, dear?" "I'm Sophie's nanny," Emma replied, lifting her chin slightly. How wonderful that Damien found someone so dedicated to childcare. Victoria's tone suggested anything but admiration. "I heard your last arrangement ended rather abruptly." Emma felt confusion ripple through her. "Last arrangement?" Victoria's smile turned predatory. "Oh, hasn't he told you? About the misunderstanding with the previous girl he hired for companionship? Though I suppose the job requirements are similar." Damien's face had gone dangerously still. "Victoria, that's enough." But the damage was done. Emma's mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed suddenly clicking into place. The way he looked at her that first night, his comments about discretion and arrangements, the strange undercurrents in their early conversations. "Excuse me," Emma managed, stepping away from both of them. "I need some air." She made her way to the hotel's terrace, her hands shaking as she gripped the stone railing. The city spread out below her, thousands of lights twinkling like stars, but she barely saw them. Her mind was reeling with the implications of Victoria's words. Damien found her there, his footsteps quiet on the stone tiles. "Emma, let me explain." She turned to face him, and he saw the hurt and confusion in her eyes. "Explain what exactly? That you hired me thinking I was something I'm not? That this whole time you've been waiting for me to fulfill some arrangement I never agreed to?" Damien ran a hand through his hair, his composure finally cracking. "It wasn't like that. Yes, there was a misunderstanding at first, but that changed the moment I saw you with Sophie." "What kind of misunderstanding?" Emma's voice was steady, but Damien could see the tremor in her hands. "The woman who placed the advertisement, she wasn't looking for a nanny. She was an escort service. When you showed up that night, I assumed you were there for the same reason other women had come to my home." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "You thought I was a prostitute. For about 10 minutes, yes?" But then you mentioned babysitting, and I realized the mistake. I should have corrected it immediately, but Sophie took to you so quickly, and you were so genuine, so different from anyone else who'd been in our lives. So you decided to keep the lie going? To let me work for you under false pretenses. There were no false pretenses about the job, Emma. You are Sophie's nanny, exactly what you applied to be. The only thing I didn't do was explain the initial confusion. Emma laughed bitterly. The initial confusion? Damien, I've been living in your house for 3 weeks, feeling like there was some undercurrent I didn't understand, some subtext I was missing. Now I know why, Emma, please. What I thought that first night doesn't matter. What matters is what I know now. You're kind, intelligent, wonderful with Sophie. You've brought light back into our lives. How can I trust anything you say? How do I know this job is real and not some elaborate game? Damien stepped closer, his eyes pleading. Because of Sophie? Because of the way she lights up when you walk into a room? Because of the way you've made our house feel like a home again? Emma wanted to believe him, but the hurt ran deep. She'd opened her heart to this family, allowed herself to care for both father and daughter, even entertained dreams of something more. Now she felt foolish and exposed. I need to think, she said quietly. I need space to process this. Don't leave, Damien said urgently. Sophie needs you. I need you. Emma met his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, but also the hurt she couldn't ignore. I won't abandon Sophie, but I need time to figure out what this means, what's real and what isn't. The next few days were strained. Emma continued her duties with Sophie, but the easy warmth between her and Damien had disappeared. She was polite but distant, professional in a way that hadn't existed before. Sophie, sensitive to the tension, became clingy and anxious. Why are you sad, Emma? The little girl asked one afternoon as they painted together. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking about some grown-up things? Are you going to leave like the other nannies? Emma's heart clenched. No, baby. I'm not going anywhere. But even as she said the words, Emma wasn't sure they were true. The trust between her and Damien felt broken, and she didn't know how to repair it. She'd fallen in love with him, she realized, somewhere between star-shaped pancakes and bedtime stories. But how could she love someone who'd built their relationship on deception? The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Emma was cleaning up after Sophie's bath when she overheard Damien on the phone in his study, his voice thick with emotion. I know I messed up, Catherine. I know you'd tell me to fight for her, but I don't know how. She looks at me like I'm a stranger now. Maybe that's what I deserve. Emma realized he was talking to his late wife, something he did sometimes when he was struggling. Her heart ached at the pain in his voice. She makes Sophie laugh the way you used to. She makes me feel alive again, and I'm terrified I've ruined it. I should have told her the truth from the beginning, but I was afraid she'd leave. And now, she might leave anyway because I'm a coward. Emma backed away from the door, tears streaming down her face. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, thinking about love and trust, about second chances and the courage it took to forgive. The next morning, she found Damien in the kitchen making coffee, his hair disheveled and exhaustion evident in every line of his body. We need to talk, she said quietly. He looked up, hope and fear warring in his expression. Okay. They sat at the kitchen island, the same place where they'd shared so many comfortable conversations. Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, gathering her courage. I understand why you didn't tell me about the misunderstanding, she began. And I understand that you were trying to protect what we